Consider this an open letter to activist feminists and politicians hoping to exploit the manufactured political crisis that is gender pay inequity. Women do not make less than men. This meme perpetuates a pernicious myth that the economy is ruled by a sexist patriarchy. And what's worse is that if you disagree or contradict this narrative, you're deemed anti-woman. How many times have you heard that for the same work, a female worker receives 74 cents for every $1 earned by a male worker? You see, when you hear something enough, you actually start to believe it. Except that these so-called studies aren't based in reality. They're based on the pursuit of a political agenda with the help of broad and misleading statistics. Yesterday, Premier Kathleen Wynne announced that Ontario is taking new steps to correct the gender wage gap that purportedly exists between men and women in Ontario. Incidentally, did you notice her announcement is based on a rigid gender dichotomy between men and women, which is to say, I wonder how the other 4 of 6 genders would feel about this, but I digress. According to the Premier, women in Ontario make 31.5% less than men for the same job. That 31.5%, by the way, is actually based on real data from Stats Canada. But what does the data actually measure? It's based on the total year compensation for all men as compared to all women. In other words, it doesn't account for numerous cultural factors, such as differences in occupation, education, full-time versus part-time status, factors that directly influence this disparity. So it's easy to understand why Wynne would use this number, because it fits into her victimhood narrative. But most pay gaps actually disappear when you account for these variables. For example, the Ontario government's own Pay Equity Commission gives a breakdown by type of employment on its website. Keep in mind, this data isn't even comparing apples to apples. It's looking at types of employment within broad sectors. For positions in the arts, for positions in the education sector, for positions in health sector, for positions in sales, for senior management positions, the male to female ratio is well above 90%. And for nurses and childcare workers, women make more. Additionally, it is simply a fact that women choose to work more part-time jobs than men. On average, Canadian men spend 39.6 hours per week at work, compared to women who spend an average of 33.2 hours per week. That's a 6-hour difference per week, a nearly 300-hour difference per year. Wynne's 31.5% annual earnings stat does not factor in this tiny, inconvenient truth. Of course, women's average annual earnings will be less than men if part-time jobs are included in that cumulative statistic. But look at this. According to the government's own Pay Equity Commission, if you separate part-time employment with full-time employment, women in part-time work actually make more than men in part-time work. Another factor is sheer biological makeup. Women give birth. That is a biological reality. It is also a social reality that women often choose to stay home with their child. And when women leave the labor market, they return with less work experience than similarly aged males. Feminists will tell you that this biological reality is a form of discrimination and punishment. Why should women carry the burden of raising kids? But sometimes it's as simple as they choose to. They choose to stay home with their kids rather than throw them into some daycare. And they sometimes choose to return to part-time work because a full-time job is simply incompatible with their lifestyle. But for women that have never been married, thus are likely childless, according to the government's own Pay Equity Commission, the male-to-female ratio is 99.7%. It's non-existent. Is that not astonishing? Now, I know I've thrown a lot of stats at you, but as I said before, most workplace gaps actually vanish when one accounts for all of the aforementioned factors. This has nothing to do with gender discrimination, and it's more than patronizing when women like former Prime Minister Kim Campbell come out and push for a rigged, gender-balanced parliament, for instance, to account for the fact that there are less women in politics than men. This is the drum that feminists and politicians hoping to exploit the gender card continually beat. But women are a diverse community, and their decisions regarding career choice are often made in accordance with their preferred lifestyle. My final point is this. In 2013, Kathleen Wynne applied for a new job for which she was hired. It was an important job and was previously only held by males. Guess what? Her pay is based on the same scale as her immediate male predecessor.